Good morning. I know that you're used to seeing our wonderful Linda in this chair, and it's a privilege for me this morning to be chairing today's Tenant Committee meeting. Debbie Douglas, Chair of TCHC's Board's Tenant Services Committee for today's meeting. Linda Jackson, the TSC Chair, is unable to attend our meeting, so in accordance with TCHC's bylaw number 2, the committee voted during its in-camera session of today's meeting to confirm my appointment as chair for today. Welcome to the public session of today's committee meeting. In light of the need for social distancing to limit the spread of COVID-19, we are holding this committee meeting virtually. And you've all been here. We're all very now well-versed in how these things go virtually. So very glad to have you all who are watching on our streaming service. Of course, we must begin all of our meetings in acknowledging the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting in the traditional territory of many nations where I am here in Toronto. We pay homage to the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is now home to diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, also the District 1 Spoon Wampum, which is an agreement amongst the nations to care for the land around the Great Lakes. As a woman of African descent, I also want to honor my people who were brought here against their will 400 years ago. It is an honor to be part, and I commit to continuing to care for the lands on which we live. Beyond the decision that I would chair today's meeting, there was no matters to report out from our in-camera sessions today. So we'll get going with our public session. During our meetings, several items will be brought forward for information, including the report of our Chief Operating Officer, an update on the contract managed portfolio, and our Q4 update on Tenants First. 2 items will also be brought forward for the committee's approval, including the harm reduction policy and the 2021 Public Tenant Services Committee work plan. I think it's important for us to always acknowledge the time that we're living through. TCHC's COVID-19 response is now in its 10th month. And once again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank our employees for the exemplary work they are doing to deliver essential services and support to our tenants. Many of our communities are among the hardest hit by the virus. And I'm proud of how our employees have stepped up to support tenants who are self-isolating and help agencies deliver food and other essentials to seniors and vulnerable tenants. In particular, I want to recognize the contributions of staff who work in our buildings. Given the resurgence of COVID-19 cases, we are maintaining the extended 10-hour shift schedules that are enabling us to deliver enhanced cleaning protocols that are preventing the spread of the virus and keeping people safe. I also want to thank everyone at the company for setting a good example by following public health advice at work and at home. In doing so, you are protecting your coworkers, your families, our tenants, and those in our city who are most vulnerable to the effects of COVID-19. Your efforts are truly appreciated by all of us here on the Tenant Services Committee and the rest of the board. This concludes my opening remarks. Thank you for listening. Now on to our agenda. Let me just remind folks how our deputation process works. For our January 25th committee meeting, in light of COVID-19, as I've said earlier, and the need for social distancing, we are holding our meetings virtually. Our meeting is being live streamed and allow for live deputations from members of the public. Members of the public wanting to depute to an agenda on today's to an item on today's agenda have the option to do so by submitting written submissions, which we have received. So thank you. Also by being teleconferenced into today's meeting to orally depute to board members. We will hear all of our deputations under agenda item number 4 this morning. All deputation submissions will be made public after today's meeting is held. Oral deputations made today will be part of our audio-video record of the meeting that TCHC will live stream through its YouTube channel. Written deputations have been distributed to committee members prior to today's meeting, so they had an opportunity to read it, and will be posted with the meeting minutes following the conclusion of our meeting today. Any members, and this is to TCHC, to our TSC colleagues, wishing to either ask questions of staff in relation to a matter on today's agenda, you have an option of using the chat box so that I can see you, especially when I don't have you up on the screen when our schedule is up. I will ask for a vote of a show of hands, and or a committee member can ask for a voice vote, at which time we will go to a screen so I can see you all, and I will call you in the order that you appear on my screen, and you will say approve or oppose. So, lots of information. Let's begin our meeting. I will now review our consent agenda items and our public regular items as listed on the agenda. Sonia, would you like to put the agenda up, please? So we have a number of consent agenda. I'm waiting for the agenda to be put up. While we wait for that, I'll just go through it, just to save us some time. Of course, we have the approval of the agenda, confirmation of our meetings of September 3rd, and our COO's report on tenant services, which actually came forward in September, was tabled, but we have a new report today, so we will keep that report on this agenda for information for committee members. And then, of course, as I mentioned at the top of our meeting, we have a number of reports coming forward, including our violence reduction plan, our harm reduction policy, our tenant engagement, fresh updates, our updates on our tenant complaints process, contract management, update on tenants first, Q4 of our 2020 fiscal year, our public work plan for the coming year for 2021, and then, of course, other business. For today's meeting, we have one issue under other business that we will speak to when we get there on the agenda. So, are there any declaration of conflict of interest from committee members having gone through the agenda? Not seeing any. Thank you. I remind you that as discussion happens, if it appears that there is a conflict, you can also declare a conflict at that time. Can I please have a motion to approve the public consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded? May I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, Uba.
Thank you, Uba. Thank you, John. All in favor, hands up. Thank you. Are there any questions from the matters arising from the minutes? Nope, not hearing any, not seeing any. If there are no questions, can I call for a motion to receive the action items update? Oh, now I can see people. Okay, I'm going to choose people. Amanda moves, Paula seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Item number 3 is received. Sheila, over to you.
Just before we go to Sheila, we have a number of members of the public who have asked to depute on the various reports that are before the committee this morning under item 4 agenda.
Yes, thank you for that.
And so in relation to those deputants who want to depute on items 4, really under the broad heading of item 4, we're proposing that the committee could hear from all of those deputants at this point in time. The first deputant who indicated a desire to depute in relation to one of those matters is Kathleen Dubé, who asked to depute in relation to item 4B. And I believe that Ms. Dubé should be on the line. Ms. Dubé, are you there? Is Ms. Dubé on the line? Hello?
Well, we tried to get Ms. Dubé on the line. Is there someone else wanting to depute on 4B or any other?
Maybe the rest of the deputants can be called up.
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting.
I agree. I don't. Let's just see if that. So the next listed deputant is in relation to item 4D, the employment opportunities for tenants at TCHC. The first deputant, the deputant who wanted to depute to that matter is Elena Korniakova. Is Ms. Korniakova on the line? I think I hear somebody joining the call in the office next to mine. So let's see who's available for us.
Okay.
Is there a deputant who's able to join the call?
Time.
Hello?
Technology, folks, it happens. Ms. Dubé?
Finding this opportunity to share my deputation regarding the violence reduction program.
Sorry.
My name is Nate.
Hi, Mr. Madani. For the committee's benefit, Nate Madani, have I pronounced your name correctly, Mr. Madani?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
Thank
Nate
you.
Madani has asked to depute in relation to the violence reduction plan service delivery alignment, which is item 4E on your agenda this morning, committee. Mr. Madani, you can proceed. You've got
Thank
5
you. Hello, board members. Thank you for your time and providing this opportunity to share my deputation regarding the violence reduction program. My name is Nate, and I've been living in the Effingham Mews for just over 17 years that is located in the Malvern neighborhood of Scarborough. For those who may not be as familiar, it's a townhouse community with mixed families. I'm currently studying at Ryerson University and enrolled in the Business Technology Management program. Although my schedule is busy between school, work, and personal time, I, along with friends I grew up with at Effingham, have been recently decided to get involved and volunteer our time towards the well-being of our community. In return, we have been working closely with our new community service coordinator involved with the TCHC's Youth Violence Reduction Program. I'm including below highlights that we've been able to accomplish and areas we're able to secretly clarify and reassurance on as a part of TCHC's Violence Youth Reduction Program, Youth Service Expansion Program. Sincerely, Nate, in the Effingham Youth Community. So Effingham Youth is combined with 110-90 50 Effingham Drive, located in Scarborough, Ontario. Below events have been in compliance with COVID, Toronto Public Health Guidelines, with the support of tenant leaders, TCHC's Community Service Coordinator, Violence Reduction Program, Youth Service Expansion Program, and community partners. In September 2020, we did an event with back-to-school backpack giveaway and barbecue takeout in collaboration with tenant leaders, Toronto Police Services, 42 Division, neighborhood officers, and Toronto Community Housing. In October 2020, we had weekly pre-cooked meals for over 70 on Fridays in collaboration with Tenant leaders, 5 and 2 Kitchen, TPS 42 Division Neighborhood Officers, and TCHC. Second, we have crime prevention through environmental design audit in collaboration with Tenant leaders, Malvern Family Resource Center, Toronto Police Services 42 Division, Neighborhood Officers, City of Toronto, Community Crisis Response Program, MedTrack, and TCHC. Concern we able to bring up were high fencing areas where past shooting incidents have occurred and have been addressed and resolved with local TCHC site staff, along with lighting around Abraham Drive, city property, upgraded via TCHC's request to Councillor McClevely's office and Toronto Hydro. Third, we had the Nike shoe giveaway to youth and families in collaboration with MFRC and TCHC. Outdoor Fall Fest, pumpkin carving, and food takeaway in collaboration with Tenant leader, Park People, TPS 42 Division Neighborhood Officers, and TCHC. November 2020, community cleanup in collaboration with Tenant leaders, Park People, Councillor McClevey, TPS 42 Division Neighborhood Officers, and TCHC. Second, we had a meeting held with Center for Immigrant and Community Services, Tenant leaders, TCHC's weekly food groceries for families living in Abraham via daily food and second harvest. Third, we had access to vacant house space for food-related programs at 110 Abraham Drive, Unit 214, and we called that space the Hope Center. Most of, if not all, townhouses at Abraham are 3-bedroom to 2-story units. The inside of the townhouse at 214 is all one floor, along with practical use of space for programs and activities. From what we understand as tenants, there are considerations being made by TCHC's management whether the space can become permanent for community activities and switch with the original community space, the previous Hope Center, Unit 212, right next door that has not been actively used for the past couple of years. We're also aware that the 3 support letters that have been submitted to TCHC's management in favor of this local Councilor's Office, Taibu Community Health Center, and Malvern Family Resource Center. We are hoping we could receive a decision and update from TCHC's management soon. Fourth, we have food distribution, personal protective equipment, PPE, and $50 grocery gift cards in collaboration with Tenant leaders, Global Medic, and TCHC. Meeting with staff and facility management and TCHC, proposed landscaping upgrades. Tenant participation has led to informed upcoming basketball court renovations, garden spaces, and outdoor workout area. 6, we have weekly breakfast program launched in collaboration with Tenant leaders, 5 and 2 Kitchen, Legacy Dreams to Reality, Taibu Community Health Center, and TCHC. Donations of books and backpacks, HD desktops via Parent Engage in Education. December 2020, we had $100 Best Buy gift cards for use via Taibu Community Health Center, 50 grocery cards of $50 each from Family Resource Center, 50 new winter jackets via D-Row Foundation, Legacy Dreams to Reality, Tenant leaders, and TCHC, and over 150 pre-cooked meals via our Share a Meal initiative in collaboration with Tenant leaders, Humanity Charity, TPS, 42 Division, Neighborhood Officers, and TCHC. In January 2021, breakfast takeout program continues to grow with information sharing between tenant staff, local elementary schools, Alexander Sterling Public School. This has led to securing $5,000 from Taibu Community Health Center in support of this program. Secondly, we had approval of 7 outdoor bulletin boards to be installed throughout 110, 90, and 50 Abraham Drive in spring 2021. Third, we had introduction and tenant participation in network meeting, including, but not limited to Family Resource Center, Taibu, Toronto Employment, and Social Service. Fifth, we have virtual meetings to help discuss COVID resources and support to families with Melbourne Family Resource Center and Taibu Center. Here are the next steps and the follow-up for these events.
Mr. Madani, you're actually well beyond the 5 minutes. If you could start to wrap up.
Sounds good. So for this next steps in the follow-up, firstly, we want a decision from TCHC around the townhouse space at 110 Ephraim Drive, Unit 214, whether this can become dedicated community space or for programs and activities. Second, following the increase of youth gang gun violence throughout Toronto and locally in our community, we would like a clear understanding of messaging from TCHC on resources that are available to violence reduction program, youth service expansion program, and pathways ways to access it. So this is in previous VRP board report in November 2020, there's been mention of $70,000 from TCHC to the City of Toronto for post-incident community support that includes number of tenant initiative activities, number of CCRF grant applications, and reduction in retaliation crimes. We want to ensure a public health and trauma-informed approach to violence reduction, addressing areas of poor education, lack of job opportunities, injury, criminal substance misuse, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and lack of positive role models. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such a thorough report. Do we have a second deputant?
Yes, I believe that Ms. Dubé is now available for the committee. Ms. Dubé had asked to depute in relation to both items 4B and 4D. And so with the committee's consent, we've proposed to have Ms. Dubé provide her comments in relation to both matters at the same time. Ms. Dubé, are you with us?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning to the Tenant Service Committee members, as well as to everyone that's listening live or at a later date. Today, I have scheduled 2 deputations. I'm going to start first with item 4B, and then my second deputations with item 4E. Firstly, item 4B, tenant complaints update. I started off with the example that was provided in the learning from collection of data for complaints poses many potential issues, not limited to privacy, security, and disclosure, barriers to access, and inconsistency. My recommendation would be to please reconsider making amendments to mitigate risk. Acknowledging in Appendix C, in-suite repair process, the potentials of discrepancies between steps 4 and step 5. Please consider revising steps to allow space and access for either tenant and staff to complete administration status updates. Acknowledging step 5 is new. To elaborate, this step is so imperative to building, strengthening relationships in tandem with recovering trust, empowering our TCHC tenants to participate and know that their voice matters. Looking forward to seeing the checklist coming out in Q1 2021 and continuing to find ways to do things better. Acknowledging current inconsistencies with tenant repairs, requesting transparency and clear communication. Preferences as far as communication is concerned, logged, and that all are involved in the process, whether it's CCC, the superintendent, the tenant, the vendor, etc. Basically to look at streamlining that. Acknowledging current inconsistency with the notice of entry, accuracy of information, and the information included, especially when it's an external vendor or contractor. Opportunity to ease any potential tension and strengthen relationships, recognizing both the short and the long-term abilities to leverage technology and to automate aspects of this whole process. Please consider upscaling to allow space and access for either tenant and staff to complete uploads of pictures or work needed or work completed. Thank you for holding space for this deputation and your continued work in this space. Now we'll go on to reading my second deputation, which is around item 4E, Violence Reduction Program, Service Delivery Alignment. Acknowledge updates made since posting item 2D, Appendix D, the Violence Reduction Program update. Acknowledging TCHC's restructuring. I'd like to pose a question. What is TCHC doing to ensure that the 4 pillars, community safety and support, tenancy management, cleaning and maintenance, are reflecting such? And acknowledging TCHC's confronting anti-Black racism work. I'd like to pose another question. How is TCHC utilizing an intersectional lens on VRP? Acknowledging the disproportionate impact on women and children, LGBTQ2S, and BIPOC, community safety, CSU, presence and collaboration with Toronto Police Services, TPS. I'd like to just take a moment to take a deep breath and pause. To honor lives lost, deep breaths for all those who can't, with love. Reflecting on our institutional settings, acknowledge the voices demanding community alternatives and the need for reform. How are we taking violently inherent practices and transforming them into systems of care and accountability? That was cited from Ravin Wings, an African Bermudian two-spirited Mohawk queer transcendent empowerment movement storyteller, Black Lives Matter Toronto Steering Committee. The University of Western Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. I post the link both in the written as well as I'll post it online. Acknowledging that this work is ongoing, Above offers free virtual webinars where you can take part in it in your workday, potentially as a lunch and learn, as they are typically held between 1 to 2 p.m. and they are free. I wanted to take another moment to thank you all for your hard work and your attention in all of these matters. We are living in strange times, and we really appreciate your work and your partnership and your energy, and thank you for listening to these deputations.
Thank you very much for both of your deputations. We've been heard, and thank you for thanking us for holding space with you. Dara? Dara, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Ms. Dubé. The next deputant in relation to the items under item 4 is Elena Korniakova, who wants to depute in relation to item 4D, the employment opportunities for tenants at TCHC. Ms. Korniakova, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
You've got 5 minutes for your deputation. I know that you've provided a written submission to the committee that's been distributed to the committee. That may help in terms of keeping you to your 5-minute limit. Good luck.
Thank you very much. So thank you for having me. My name is Elena Korniakova. I am an architect and co-founder of the Lawrence Heights Art Center. This is a tenant-led non-for-profit organization operating for 5 years now. Our art group is very grateful to the TCHC for generously providing us with the space for these 5 years. So 2 years ago, the Art Center developed and launched the Youth Architects Annual Program with paid internship opportunities. According to numerous TCHC documents, 35% of tenants are youth under... Hello? Sorry?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so 35% of tenants are youth under the age of 25, and they are considered as critical stakeholders. Youth education and engagement is one of the main streams of CED plan. So whereas TCHC internship and youth works provide very important general essential skills and include life experience within the TCHC organization, Youth Architects paves a new path to quality education and focuses on a specific area of architecture. That is also entailed to the revitalization in Lawrence Heights. Commonly known that the architectural field is lacking Black representatives. Given that Lawrence Heights has a large Black community, our program creates a bridge for young tenants to explore this demanding and demand this area as their future career. Not only our program contributes to the CABR plan, but also promotes the revitalization program as a space of exploration and application of the skills. The skills are developed in relationship to their home community, while creating stronger social connections and developing a sense of care for the space the youth live in. So at that point, I would like to refer to the conference summary that I provided earlier and for more details. And I would just mention a few main points. Our program engaged over 30 youth with 30% paid internship opportunity. The program focuses on 4 main aspects. The first is building an understanding and empathy around Lawrence Heights revitalization. Next is recognizing residents as experts of their own lived experience and their value in the design process. Third is the reimagining the community through an architectural design approach. And the fourth aspect is presenting design ideas to the community, and in this way contributing to the Lawrence Heights revitalization plan and community consultations. So the outcome is that 30% of our participants have chosen architecture as their future career. Others became dedicated participants of the program, which allows them to enter intern positions next year and leads to an increase of the paid internship opportunity up to 50% that we already secured with our sponsors, the Ontario Association of Architects. We also introduced our initiative to the Jane and Finch community and established a long-term partnership with the BYLD program facilitators. So based on these accomplishments, I would like to recommend to the committee to consider our program as a sustainable and valuable contribution to CEV strategy and explore the possibility to consolidate a formal partnership between the Tenant's Initiative Youth Architects Internship Program and CEV for mutual benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kornikova. Ms. Kornikova is the final of the deputants that asked to speak to items related to item 4.
Thank you.
We'll be deputing on item 7 later in the meeting.
Thank you, Dara. Sheila?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could please have the slide deck up. I have, if we can move to the first slide. Second slide. I'll be presenting 5 reports today, starting with our operational performance measures. We then have an update on our tenants complaint process, an update on where we're at with the tenant engagement refresh, a report on employment opportunities for tenants at TCHC, and our 5th report, an update on the violence reduction program and how we're aligning it with our new service delivery model.
Yes, and we will deal with each report on its own. Yes.
Correct. The slides aren't moving on my screen. I'm wondering, Debbie, if they're moving on yours.
No, they're not.
So I'm looking now for slide 4.
Item 4, will you move to the second slide? Right now we have the title page.
Right, if I can move to the 4th slide. There we go. So the first report, our operational performance measures. I'll take a moment and speak to each of these 11 items that impact the service that we provide to tenants and where we're at with each one. Starting with the first operational performance measure, if I can move to slide 5. Our service requests are up. Calls to our client care center were up by just over 4,000 calls, primarily due to tenants who were calling to get more information about it and to contact staff. Given that we're doing things remotely, the call center is providing a vital function for us, enabling tenants to connect more directly with staff. Our elevator calls were down, decreased by 98 calls for maintenance related items. And given that everyone's working from home, more tenants are at home, we take this as evidence that the capital upgrade program and maintenance programs are providing what tenants need in terms of elevator service. We know that's a critical function for our tenants. Another critical function, pest control. Looking back, if we compare where we're at today versus our average of 2019, the volume of demand pest treatments has decreased by 427. I want to make sure that our board, our committee, and our tenants understand that no tenant who has requested pest treatment has been declined service. We have had to decrease whole building treatments because of COVID, but if an individual tenant requests service, we will make sure that we provide it. And we have also continued monthly preventative treatments in building common spaces, lobbies, rec rooms, offices, and laundry rooms. Moving now to vacancies. Our vacancy rate in November 2020 sat at 2.43, which is marginally higher than our vacancy average in 2019. Of more concern to our company is that our vacancies have steadily increased over the last several months from a low of 1.78% in November. And that increase in vacancy is driven largely by our rent geared to income units. Our market unit vacancy is well below 1%. If I could have the next slide. So what are we doing about it? We have established a target, bring our vacancy rate down to 1.5% by July of 2021, and we're doing that. We've undertaken 4 initiatives. The seniors housing unit, basically because COVID stopped renting units with the onset of COVID, they have now resumed the letting of units to tenants. We have approved through the City of Toronto phase 2 of a program called Rapid Rehousing, where we can bring tenants out of the shelter system into TCHC units, but with full support, with furnished units and full tenant support. Phase 1 was successful. We filled some 300 units, housed over 400 individuals from the shelter system with good tenancy management outcomes. Our third strategy, we seek and received support from our service manager in the city to bypass our overhoused wait list so that we could get directly to tenants and rent our units more effectively. And we are also organizing where we have buildings that have high percentage of vacant units. We're organizing bulk unit showings. So while our vacancy rate up marginally in November, I'm pleased to report, and you'll see this in our next update to committee, that at the end of December, that vacancy rate has started to trend down, which is good news for our company. Next performance measure that we pay a lot of attention to, arrears. It's understandable that during COVID, our arrears have gone up. At the end of November 2020, outstanding arrears stood at 10.2 million, with 5.1 million in repayment agreements, meaning that our total arrears of 15.3, when you add those two numbers together, 5.1 are in repayment agreements, meaning that we have maintained those tenancies. So now let's take a look at the 10.2 million of outstanding arrears. Of that 10.2, 7.1 million are currently being managed. They are in process to be dealt with. 3.1 million are unmanaged. And what we mean by that is that we haven't had a successful outreach to tenants to try and secure their tenancies through a repayment agreement. If I could have the next slide. Our goal in 2021 is to reduce those unmanaged arrears by 75%. And how are we going to do that? through a new arrears collection process. We've worked very closely with OACH to simplify the process to collect sure that tenants that have vulnerabilities get the supports that we need, and to work with our tenant population to maintain tenancies. We are also seeing in varying degrees a restart of the legal process. There is currently an eviction moratorium by the provincial government, but they have given us the ability to work with tenants up to and including to and excluding eviction, to bring to tenants the fact that they are in arrears, that they need to work with us to manage those arrears, to bring them to repayment agreements. But at this current point in time, through to the end of the emergency order that the government's in place, we are not in a position to go that last step and evict a tenant. Hopefully, we can work with all our tenants prior to that step and bring them to a point where they have a repayment agreement that they can manage and maintain their tenancy. I have the next slide. In terms of community safety, there have been 91 crimes against persons, 83 crimes against property in November 2020, which is a marginal decrease of 6 and 2 incidents when you consider 2019 average. But I would like to point out, if you look at this graph in view, that while there are a consistent increase in shootings and homicides across the city of Toronto in 2020, the proportion of those shootings and homicides on TCHC property relative to those city statistics has decreased from 2017 and 2018. If I could go to the next slide. Reporting on fire incidents. There have been 28 fire incidents in the portfolio, which is an increase of 11 when we look at last year's average. During that period, 64% of those incidents have been attributed to cooking fires. We continue to work with our communities to raise awareness on fire safety prevention. We have monthly campaigns, targeted public education, and we are working closely with buildings that experience the highest level of cooking fires caused by cooking incidents to bring information to tenants to help them get those accidents under control. Moving to the next slide, our referrals for internal and external supports decreased by 102 when we hit our 2019 average. However, in this year of past year 2020, responding to COVID, we did complete some 19,000 wellness checks with tenants, the majority of those, some 12,000 in the seniors housing portfolio, family portfolio, about 7,000 wellness checks, provided necessary supports, and we have just initiated a second wave of wellness checks for our vulnerable tenants in the family portfolio this month. We've identified some 5,600 tenants that we're reaching out to connect with and make sure we get them the supports they need. And our seniors housing unit group has also initiated the next wave of wellness supports for seniors. And with that, Madam Chair, that completes my operational performance measure update.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Committee members, questions or comments? John?
Sheila, on fire incidents, do we have a record of false fire alarms?
We do. and they're significant.
And how much does it cost the housing corporation?
So I believe in 2020 that the false fire alarm charges were in the order of $4 million to the company.
And is this, in terms of the number of false fire alarms, is that an increasing or decreasing metric? And what are we doing to mitigate it? What are we doing to encourage people not to pull the fire alarm?
So it's about tenant awareness, education. We will be initiating work with Toronto Fire Services this year to try and bring those numbers down, looking at some measures like replacing pull stations with more smoke detectors on the technical side, but it really is an education campaign that is current, ongoing, and probably should be strengthened.
And do we get a sense from Toronto Fire that it's, you know, the prevalence of false alarms is greater at Toronto Community Housing than in other apartment buildings?
I actually don't have that stat. That's something we could look into for our next report.
But it's still there. It's costing, it's $4 million a year. It's costing the organization.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, it would be, I think it would be great if we could focus some attention on communicating that to residents and, you know, the need for the fact that it actually does cost quite a bit.
We could do a lot with $4 million.
Right.
You're
okay.
correct.
Thank you. That's it, Debbie.
Thank you, John. Other comments or questions? Amanda, any comments or questions? Uba? Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
We have in the past, we've had the report. Number one, this isn't included, this deck isn't included in our agenda. Are we going to be getting a copy of it? I'd prefer to have had it. I would have preferred to have had it beforehand, but I couldn't find it. That's the first thing.
Yeah, we can send the deck out. It does mirror what's in the reports, but you're right, we could send it out as well.
So do we have the actual numbers then in, I see the report, but the number of vacant units and the amount in arrears, please?
It's in the reports.
Okay, I'm looking, but I'm having trouble with that.
Okay.
So I guess I'm going to say that in the slideshow, that's what I would like to see.
Okay.
But Kevin, I thought you gave these reports at one point where we saw the number of vacant units related to relocation, the number of vacant units related to repairs, and the number of vacant units that are just vacant. Was that not how we got info before? As a report?
We can include that information in this report if the committee requires it.
I'm asking, is that not what we've had in the past? Kevin, I seem to remember your CEO reports, or was it Giro that those were contained in?
We had some of that information. You're correct, Councillor. Those reports have morphed over a period of time, and I think that the trend reporting here that we are sharing is provides a better outline of the situation rather than the static reports that we used to provide.
Well, I think the board, since we're shifting the type of report, in this kind of overview, how many vacancies are there? What's the number? What's the arrears? What are the numbers? It's all about numbers.
Councillor,
but the arrears numbers are included in this information.
I hear you, but they're not here in the deck. So very simple for you to simply say, here's the number, because they're in the report. I don't want to belabor it, but.
Sure, I'll make sure I do that for the
15.2.
next report.
Pardon?
Councillor, I will make sure that the numbers are highlighted in the next update that I give. If you look at page 1 of 6, there's a chart, rentable vacant units, 1383, up 16 units from our 2019 average. Non-rentable units, 2291, down 64 units from our 2019 average.
Okay. There's so much paper, and when I'm on here,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to go back. So those are the hard numbers. If really a vacancy rate of 2.0, that could be 15 units in a small organization, or it could be 2,000 units. So it's all the scale, and I think that that's important because 2.43 is very high. I'm glad to see markets coming down, but that's still a very high one. I don't know if it's COVID or people aren't moving. So that's one of the things I think I need to know more about, and we all need to know more about. And then the other is around the violence and the shootings. And I know you said, Sheila, not on TCHC property, because we don't consider anything that goes on with our tenants or involved tenants that isn't on our property to be related to TCHC. The rest of the world does, but we don't. So I'm just not sure if we were to add in TCHC related, if that number would go up or down. That's one of my questions. But really and truly around vacancies, around arrears, where we're at, justifying that 2.43, the plan to bring it down. To me, those are the things the board really needs to get a grip on. And that would be my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Kevin, you look as if you want to say something.
Sorry, I was not. I was just noticing that John wanted a comment.
Oh, thank you. John?
I guess for Kevin or for Sheila, how many of the homeless have we taken in? There's been an increase in homeless during the pandemic. We have people sleeping in parks, and I'm just wondering, has TCHC been working with the city to provide shelter for some of these folks?
Yeah, we have 2 programs that we've worked on with the city, 2 phases of a program called Rapid Rehousing. And what it does is allow for individuals from the shelter system to come into housing with supports. So when they come, the unit is furnished and they have the support that they need to have a successful tenancy.
And
so
what kind of numbers, Sheila?
300 units in phase 1. That was prior to the end of 2020, over 400 individuals.
Okay.
And another key component of that program is that we have weekly reviews with the SSHA staff who are matching the tenants to the unit with the frontline staff and our team to make sure that the supports are working. And they're primarily focused along the Sherbourne Strip. It's where we have a high vacancy rate and the largest number of shelters in the city. So we've had good success with phase 1. The city has funding to support supports and furniture for phase 2, and we're just starting that matching now.
And so you say we've taken in over 400 individuals?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in 300 units. Amanda?
Will phase 2 also be in the Sherbourne area, or is it going to be expanded to other areas of TCHC?
So right now we've got sort of hot spots with high vacancy rates, and there is a small pocket in the northwest, in the northeast, and in the central, the Sherbourne Strip area. So we're identifying communities where we have high vacancy rates, where we need additional supports, bring agencies in through this funding that the city has been able to fund, get the supports that we need, trying to establish anchor agencies in these buildings to continue to provide support after this program ends. So a lot of work being done in this area. And it's also bringing down our vacancy rate as well.
Are these one bedrooms or bachelors that are being provided for the people that are coming out of the shelter?
So it's dependent on the individual, what their needs are. A lot of bachelors though. It's a lot of single individuals.
Very good. Sheila, are we tracking individuals versus families versus?
Yes, we are.
Very good. It'll be good when you report out those things. That was a good question, Amanda. Not seeing any other hands. Uba?
Sorry again, you can't see my hand.
I can't see you. Just a minute, Paula. Uba, did you have a question?
No, just a quick question. Sheila, the people who are eligible for this, do they have to be in a shelter, or those who are couch surfing or staying with family or friends are also eligible for this program? Because there are a lot of homeless people who are not in a shelter.
Yeah, right now they're coming to us through SSHA. They're individuals who are on the wait list who are in shelter, within a shelter.
So the answer is yes, you must be in a shelter.
Shelter, correct.
That's unfortunate. Paula?
Yeah, that was a really important question. If you can come from somewhere else rather than a shelter, because there's many people that are underhoused, so that would be an interesting pursuit to figure that out, how to manage this, get more people in. I have found the rent arrears. I haven't found the exact number of vacant units, though.
Councillor, it's on.
What page is it on, Sheila?
Let me find the page. It is on page.
And I appreciate the pagination, Dara. Thank you.
Page 70, page 1 of 6 of the report.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? John, Amanda, Uba, Paula? Okay.
If there are no other questions, and given how the committee has received the reports this morning, we've prepared a comprehensive motion through the committee to receive all of the information and all of the reports.
Okay, can I have a mover of the motion? Derek, can you put that back up, please?
Yep.
Sorry, what was that motion?
Yeah.
So these reports for A through 4E, rather than voting on them all separately, there are actually 5 different agenda items on today's agenda, because the committee has received them all at once. We've consolidated.
Point of order, Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, John.
We've only discussed 4A, so I think it's a bit presumptuous that we're going to, before we've even had an opportunity to ask questions on B, C, D, and E.
So we can either vote on each item individually, or we can wait till the end of all of the matters as to how the committee wants to proceed. I've got a motion for 4A as well.
Dara, at the start of the meeting, we said we would deal with them separately.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm asking for a mover and seconder for 4A. After conversation, John and Amanda. Thank you. All in favor? Yay. Thanks, Sheila. We're on to 4B. 4A is accepted.
Okay, if I can, thank you. So this report is an update on where we're at with our tenants complaint process. The committee may remember that we have mid last year, we've moved to form a dedicated team within the call center that manages and responds to tenant complaints. It is a work in progress, and I'm here today to talk to you about program enhancements and then give you some key complaints data and trends that we're tracking. So we have adopted a single stage escalation model for tenant complaints, which is supported by a team called Solution that works out of the call center. And we moved to single stage escalation because we wanted a clear, simple process for tenants to be able to file a complaint. So that complaint process is available to tenants on our website. It's right on the front page. You click a button to register a complaint, or you can register a complaint through the call center. So what changes, enhancements are we making? We are aligning the solutions team to the regions, and the solutions team member will be supported centrally, but will operate out of the region that they support. And we've done that to more closely align the person who is receiving the complaint, responding to the complaint, to the people who are delivering the service, so that when a complaint is registered, we can work with the region and resolve the issue directly. So we've got that underway. We're also looking at providing standardized training, very specialized training for our solutions team, so that they are able to drive to resolution, that a complaint is in, they can gather the background information, work with the team locally, and resolve the complaint. So it's a second initiative that we have underway, and we're always looking to learn from our complaints, to improve our workflows, our processes, to better serve tenants and to standardize them. So that is work that's underway within the solutions team. And now I'll move to complaints data and trends. So in 2020, the solutions team received 2,322 complaints, a notable increase that was observed and coincided with the implementation of a communications campaign that we launched in August of 2020. So in August of last year, we went out into community through information that was posted in buildings, mail out to inform tenants about the complaint process, and we saw an uptake in complaints. Of the 2,322 complaints, the top complaint categories were building services, 18%, or 423, antisocial behavior, 17.6%, 409, or 6% of staff complaints of total there 128. So there has been a year-over-year increase across the board in complaints, largely in those three areas: building services, antisocial behavior, and building staff complaints. So learning from complaints. As complaints come in and we notice trends, we want to improve the service that we're providing. And I'll give you an example. We issue notices of entry. When vendors will be on site to complete a demand in suite maintenance work order, so we give tenants a window when a vendor be on site. There are instances where the window is large, where vendors may have been delayed, and currently tenants have no opportunity to receive updates from the vendor to say, you had a window from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. I am en route and I will be at your address within 30 minutes. So to improve level of service to tenants, especially during COVID, we now require those demand vendors to call the tenants directly while en route to give them a more accurate, updated, estimated time of arrival. This ensures that tenants have a better line of sight into when vendors are arriving and can prepare to receive them. So that's just one example of a trend that we saw coming in through complaints and a response that we're trying to see if it improves our quality of service to tenants. So with that, Madam Chair, that's my presentation on our tenants' complaint process.
Thank you, Sheila. Comments or questions? John?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sheila, it's great. Obviously, it's positive that we are enabling residents to communicate with us their satisfaction in one way or another. But it is also a little disconcerting that building complaints have almost doubled in the last year. Can you comment on that? I mean, we're spending a lot of money on cleaning buildings. We're cleaning them more thoroughly. There seem to be more personnel. We're gravitating away from contract managed buildings, directly managed buildings, and yet complaints on buildings are still doubling, almost doubling.
So I think it's largely driven by the complaint process that tenants now have an opportunity to simply, clearly
getting too much feedback.
lodge a complaint, whereas they didn't have that direct route into a complaints process prior to August of last year. So it's you give people an opportunity to inform you about the service that you're providing, and they'll take it, and it's up to us to respond. I mean, if you look at the stats for building service in Q3 of 2020, that's when we announced the campaign for complaint registration, and a small decrease, or a decrease of 30 complaints in Q4. So we gave people a window to complain. They're complaining, we're responding, and we'll keep responding.
And do we as an organization survey satisfaction of building condition?
So we will be through the service quality for a while. We have a set of quality experience surveys in maintenance and cleaning, tenancy management, community safety, and support. Staff have completed those surveys, their thoughts on the quality of service that they're delivering. Now that we're getting tenant leadership established in the hub structure, we've got 39 communities now that have established tenant leadership. By the end of Q1, we'll be going out to those 39 communities and having them complete these service quality indicators. So it's through that system that we'll be able to understand at a granular level, at a building level, the quality of service that we're providing.
So in regard to the building complaints, what are you seeing is the greatest preponderance? In what area the greatest preponderance of complaints? Is it maintenance not being done quickly enough? Is it uncleanliness?
It's elevators, plumbing, and pest control. Those are the three top categories in building services.
Okay. Okay, well, hopefully, once if we survey them, and if it's a reasonable survey without, 1,000 questions, we'll get a good response, and we can get a sense as to the level of satisfaction from the residents and whether or not they see an improving trend, because that's what we will want.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
That's all, Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Other questions? Unmute yourself, committee members, if you want to ask a question. Not hearing any. I need a mover and seconder to accept the report. Oh, sorry, Amanda. Oh, Amanda, are you moving or are you asking a question? You're moving? Okay. Amanda move, seconder. Okay, Uba. All in favor? Hands, please. If you're not, say no. It's approved. And I want to welcome our committee chair, Linda Jackson, who's joined us for the public meeting. Linda, glad you can be with us for this part of the conversation. Sheila, moving on.
So I'm going to give you an update now on our tenant engagement refresh. You just heard me explain to board members the fact that we now have 39 communities in the portfolio that have full tenant leadership in place. So as the committee knows, we had planned on an election across the portfolio last April. It was planned for April 16th.
You're feeding back, Sheila. Can you stop while we get all the muting sorted out? Thank you.
Okay, I'll try again. I don't know if it's my mic.
Go ahead, Sheila.
So we had planned an election there. That's better. We had planned an election last April 16th to establish tenant leadership across all of our tenant service hubs. At the onset of COVID, we had to pivot, shift gears, look at different ways to connect with communities. We have presented several times to committee on where we're at with that. And today I'm presenting on phase 1 of the establishment of tenant leadership in 57 communities. We have full tenant leadership in place in 39 of those communities. We have partial tenant leaders in place in 6 and no leaders in 12. So we have moved forward on phase 1, and we are now initiating phase 2. If I can go to the next slide. So as we committed to committee, and this is documented in detail in the report that's in your package, we undertook lessons learned with the participants who had participated in phase 1, key lessons learned at a high level that were identified by staff and tenants always. And this happens in whatever initiative we undertake. We have to improve communications. Tenants were particularly interested in us communicating on safety measures where we have the tenant rep model, and we are doing in-person elections, door-to-door knocking, in-person elections. They wanted to ensure that they got adequate communication around COVID safety measures. We utilize WebEx for online engagement. Tenants would prefer that we use an alternate, able to do so, but we were able to get devices and supports out to community to enable the WebEx sessions that we had with tenants to be conducted successfully. Tenants wanted to understand more about what does tenancy in good standing mean, increase awareness of the process to maintain that. And tenants also asked for our support in providing access to the internet. So those are lessons learned from phase 1 that we will be applying to phase 2, which is just commencing now. And our target is to identify building townhouse community members and community reps by the end of April. And a detailed schedule for how phase 2 will roll out is included in your package in the appendix. So we've concluded phase 1, conducted the lessons learned, and we're moving forward with phase 2, and a goal to have the 170 communities to have worked through those communities to establish tenant leadership by the end of April.
Yeah, I'm assuming that April should be 2021, Sheila. Say 2020 on your slide. Yeah.
Correct.
No
You
problem.
correct.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
Okay, are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Comments or questions, committee members? Linda, that includes you.
I
Let me
have
scroll through.
some questions
Yes.
here.
Just a minute. Amanda, and then Councillor Fletcher.
I just had a question. So there's 12 communities that don't have a leader. So I'm just wondering, since we now concluded phase 1, what's going to happen with those communities?
So we move through a process to bring tenant leadership in to those communities, and that process is within the slide deck, or not in the slide deck, in the report that's in front of you. So we attempted to get tenant leadership in those communities. We are required to wait 12 weeks and then initiate a by-election. So we'll move forward and catch up in those communities in phase 1 while we launch phase 2.
Sorry, just out of curiosity, what 12 communities are those that don't have a leader?
I could get that information for the committee. We can send it out. We'll send out who was in the 39, who was in the 6 that have partial, and who are in the 12.
And
we'll
do you know why they don't have a leader? Is it because they couldn't decide if they wanted to have a tenant representative or a committee, or is it just that no one came forward?
So all of the 57 phase 1 communities identified either building committee or tenant rep, so they knew that. We just, individuals did not come forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Amanda. Paula?
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks for this. I can't find right now the original motions because, as you know, we asked to have this broken down for those communities that are ready to proceed, and the 57 communities were determined ready to proceed. So it's a little odd to me that over 50% did not, now don't have tenant leaders. And my impression was we were going to really dig into phase 1 to understand a number of things, including number of tenants who'd come out to those first meetings, etc., and be very careful before we move to 170 communities. Going from 57 to 170 is quite a bit. I'm not sure, Sheila, if we had those communities listed earlier. I can't recall, but I thought we did, although there was a big list, and we said put them into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I would, I don't want to belabor this morning, but I'm not prepared yet to say, great, shove off and start again. I do need to understand why 57 communities were ready and yet 18 of 18 communities have nothing in place. So I think probably I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to go back and look at the significant motions and directions from the board from the spring, make sure they're captured here, and how to proceed for the next phase 2. And I think that had to be approved. I'm unsure. So as I say, I don't want to belabor it, but I will be back and ready for the board. So maybe we should do some of this work between now and the board to make sure that we've met all of the requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Other committee members? John? Linda? Uba? Okay, not hearing any other comments. Are we ready to move forward? Motion and seconder to accept the report for C, Tenant Engagement Refresh Update Report. Okay, I'm going to have to assign.
Just on
Thank
the
you.
tenant refresh update, Madam Chair, I'm not prepared to receive that just yet. I'd just like to send that off to the board. I'm not voting on that.
Okay, so, but we just,
everything that was requested. So I think we should, this is part of Tenants First, and it has to meet certain standards. So just to make sure it does, that's all.
okay, so we can defeat the motion. So
To receive for information, that's it.
yes.
Not
So
approved.
the motion only contemplates receipt of information.
Receipt, yes.
And
There's nothing to approve.
work on that.
I'll move for
between now
information.
and the board. And
Thank you, Linda.
and to review anything further between now and the board.
Okay, so Paul, I'm separating it. So we're having a motion to receive for information, moved by Linda, seconded by John. All in favor? And then I am going to treat what you've just said, Paula, as a directive to management to do the necessary work between now and our February 26th board meeting. So
if necessary.
If necessary.
If necessary. Yeah.
If necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Sheila, you're back on.
Okay. So our next report is on employment opportunities for tenants, for our tenants. So I am bringing you a summary of past, current, and future employment opportunities for tenants that we're working on. So by way of background, back in 2006, the board approved a community economic development strategy. So providing employment opportunities for
Sheila,
tenants.
we have the same problem again, the doubling up and echoing. And maybe somebody's not.
Yes, I think it's me, Sheila, so sorry.
No problem. I hope it's not me. So we're here today to present employment opportunities for tenants, give you some history, talk to you about what we've currently got underway, what we're contemplating for the future, because economic development is understandably critically important for our tenants, for our company. So it has a standing history. The board of directors approved a community and economic development strategy back in 2006 with a goal to promote economic resiliency in TCHC as a means of breaking the cycle of poverty and contributing to the creation of healthy communities. We have taken steps and have implemented programs and initiatives over the last 14 years to fulfill that original directive. Some were informal and community-based, local teams hiring tenants to complete the common area painting, scale and formalized contract agreements with subsidiaries to support tenant hires. And we have focused tenant employment through the following programs. So this is what we've got underway currently. We have internal opportunities through programs like YouthWorks, external opportunities, job fairs, partnerships. An example would be TTC Women in Transit, social enterprise development, the B3 program, where we support tenants to start social enterprises, and a new program that's coming online, Real 6, which supports the incubation for film and TV industry. In our facilities management department, we hire tenants to help us do outreach and engagement with communities around capital projects that we have underway. Human Resources has initiatives underway with OW and TESS, and through our revitalization team, we have tenant benefit agreements which provide funding employment opportunities with development. Some initiatives that we have underway looking to the future will be working with our local 416 partners to deliver community job fairs. We had hoped to get one up before the end of 2020, but with the lockdown and now the provincial order, that job fair was delayed. But as soon as we can get back out into community, we'll be doing that. We are revisiting our social procurement policy to understand if we can advance having tenant-led initiatives deliver services to Toronto community housing in a more comprehensive fashion. And we will also continue to work with our HR department so that we can leverage a section of the applicant profile to indicate whether an applicant is a current or former tenant to ensure that they are being considered for job opportunities that they're qualified for. So that is the conclusion of my report on employment opportunities for tenants.
Thank you, Sheila. The floor is open for comments or questions. Sheila, are we collecting or asking for demographic information from applicants as well, whether or not it's around gender or race, disability, second language other than English or French?
I believe that we will begin doing that. We're not doing that currently.
That would be very good as we move forward around issues of employment equity. Those are some of the low-hanging fruit that I think we need to be paying attention to. Comments or questions, committee members?
I have a quick question.
Please go ahead.
And I agree with you. We need the diversity in terms of the language. Sheila, this is great. I'm really happy to see we're doing all this for employment opportunity for the tenants. How do we make sure that tenants know this opportunity? Are we using social media? Are we mailing to them? Are we doing other meetings? How will they find out this opportunity so they don't miss out?
So each of these opportunities has their own communication strategy, but I know that Paula Knight, in our VP of Comms Strategic Planning, is looking at all tenant-facing communication, vehicles that we use, trying to expand to use social media in a more comprehensive way to improve how we generally communicate with tenants. So each of these programs has had its own individual local-based comms plan, but I know Paula is looking broader across our tenant base, across the company, across all channels for communication with tenants, and she'll be reporting out on the improvements. Right now it's local, probably not extensive enough.
When will Paula be reporting out on that?
Paula, are you on the line?
Sheila, just wanted to let you, Paula's father is taken ill and been hospitalized, so she is not on the call at the date, but she will be reporting out in the next quarter in that regard, Debbie.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for sharing that. Please pass on our thoughts to her. Other comments or questions from committee members? Not hearing any. Can
Debbie,
I?
hands up. Debbie, hello.
Oh, sorry, John.
No problem. So Sheila, it sounds like there's a lot on the go that we're doing to help tenants land jobs. The question is, how do I, as a board member, evaluate the effectiveness of this? Because there doesn't seem to be. This is a snapshot of what we're doing, but I don't know if the intention is to show results here or not, because I don't see. I mean, there's mention that we have 3 community service coordinators working on it. We're working with Toronto Employment and Social Services, but I don't know how many people are actually finding jobs and getting placed, and how many people this is actually benefiting.
So why don't we commit to bring that information back to the next Tenant Services Committee? So we'll go program by program, number of tenants engaged and jobs found.
Because obviously, like TCHC is devoting some resources to this. I mean, we have 3 community service coordinators. There's people in human resources we're talking about that are working on it. I don't know how much, from a sort of like our labor pool is devoted to this, and yet, and on as somebody, as a board member, I see Toronto already does this, and I'm wondering, are we replicating the work that's already being done by Toronto Employment and Social Services? Are we overlapping what they're doing? Is it necessary that obviously it's necessary for us to do what we're doing if we're getting results, but I can't see any results.
Fair point. We'll bring the results to the next Tenant Services Committee meeting.
That'd be great. Okay.
And not only the amount of people employed, but where and for how long. That would be helpful as well.
We'll do that. And I just wanted to thank the committee that I had an opportunity to meet some of the participants in these programs, hear their stories, what these programs have meant to them, and it's a rewarding aspect of this job. But I'll bring the information to committee. And John, you also raise a good point about understanding how we partner with other city-led functions that are already providing these services. So we don't want to duplicate, we want to enhance and connect.
And it could be that we augment their service. Maybe they're not reaching the people in our that are housed at Toronto Community Housing. Maybe they're, maybe we're better able to do that, and I'm fine with that, as long as the stories that you have heard sound great, and I'd just like to see a little more evidence that it's really getting to a good number of people.
Fair point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions, John. Other questions or comments?
Just as from Paula.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, I support that hard numbers. We don't have a lot of time as the board, and we just need hard numbers in the areas that are important to us. So I know that when we had the Regent Park analysis of the jobs that were created in phase 1, there were 300 CPR courses were placed as jobs. And the committee, which was the city committee, was very concerned about that and have asked for more. I'm just going to go back to even the chart that we have about operational performance, non-rentable vacant units. We used to get a breakdown where they were and everything else. So we're here to make sure that we have the information and data. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Paula. I agree, because I don't know when, Sheila, you talk about programs, if we're talking about jobs. So yes, I would like to see the job numbers, please. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to receive for information. Thank you, Amanda and Linda. Much appreciated. Okay, Item E.
Just need a vote as well.
Yeah, so while John is uploading his presentation, I invite those of you who can to just stand and do one stretch. We've been all sitting for a long time.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just on that last matter, we had a mover and seconder, but I don't think we took a vote. Can we just
sorry. If anyone disagrees, say yay. Okay, thank you. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
John, you have the floor.
Okay, so our last report is on our violence reduction program and how we are aligning this program with our new service delivery model, and to give you some information around the status and performance of the VRP. So the violence reduction program is focused on improving safety and security for tenants through community support, in parallel with enhanced security present and enforcement. It is being implemented through one of our 4 pillars of service, the community safety and support pillar, the other 3 being cleaning, maintenance, tenancy management. And the community safety and support pillar focuses on improving safety in the community. Safety through engagement, through program delivery, and specific activities designed to look at safety measures. Next slide. So the Violence Reduction Program Community Safety Coordinator, the VRP CSCs, are now in place across all regions. Regionally, they're in the early stages of building key relationships that they need to develop to link tenants to program and opportunity. They are working with community partners in their regions. If I could have the next slide. We have deployed CSU VRP officers to provide enhanced capacity to support community across the 19 VRP sites. 10 of them have security presence on site. An additional 9 have program opportunities. The deployment of the CSU VRP officers provide visual deterrent, enhanced enforcement, and they do joint patrols in partnership with TPS in the 10 communities. Our special constables, there are questions that have arisen at committee. We've provided information in this update around special constables, diversity and mental health training that they have received. We've also provided an update on CS involvement in the CABR strategy, confronting anti-Black racism strategy, and to date, we've held 4 staff sessions with CSU staff to gain insight in relation to issues, barriers, and around community safety and confronting anti-Black racism. I also want to point out 2 committee members that contained within your report are updates on the regional community safety coordinator I spoke about. Page 101 of your agenda package highlights what those community safety coordinators have been doing in the West, East, and Central region. They've had initial meet and greet with community partners to talk about how to work together to support the communities. They're identifying referral pathways for families who need the supports being offered. The West team is meeting with TPS in early January 2021 to discuss the Toronto Police Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force. They've supported the Lawrence Heights Parent Association to complete a series of harm reduction workshops, supported tenants in the Neptune community to apply for crisis response funding. They were successful in that, and they have supported young people in that community to engage community members and complete community surveys to understand where that community is at in regards to preventing youth violence. In the East region, those VRP community service coordinators have supported various initiatives during December 2020, pardon me, that largely focused on food security. They provided 150 meals to the Danzig community, working with the Malvern Family Resource Group and Taibu to distribute over 200 grocery and electronic gift cards, and they're working with TPS on a weekly breakfast club. In the central region, those CSCs have connected with a mental health service provider for youth in Region Park. They're having meetings with that service provider to explore space possibilities for program and administrative space in one of the buildings. They've reached out to Youth Workers Network in Region Park to coordinate services. They've joined the DEC meeting for service coordination and delivery with. So you can see that of communities, 19 coordinators, and at a hub level, 10 of the communities have enhanced site presence by our that are being developed through the violence reduction plan, enhanced CSU presence on sites where it's needed, but more importantly, program delivery and support tenants in those communities with a focused approach through individuals who are on the ground connecting with community. And I believe you heard about some of that work through our deputant at the beginning of this meeting. So that's where we're at. I should also point out that it's highlighted in the report that we have suspended the hiring of 12 special constables in the VRP program while we look broadly at the violence reduction plan to understand where the gaps are and where we need to bring in additional resources on either the program side or the special constable side. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Sheila. Comments or questions?
Paula, I just want to ask the community service coordinators that you're discussing, are they special constables, Sheila, under the violence reduction program?
No, they are staff members under the community safe support pillar. They report to the manager of community safety and support.
And who's that?
There are 3 managers of community safety and support, 1 in each region. Those managers report to the GM. So,
okay. So they're not in any way, because this is a little mixed up with what I'm going to call enforcement, CSU. This has nothing to do with the CSU, but here it is. under this, I'm seeing that the CSU VRP officers receive diversity and mental health training. I think the direction we're going in isn't necessarily for that to be a special constable or police role. It's very
Right.
different. And this is part of that review that we asked for when we agreed, or I didn't agree, but the board agreed to the 50 new officers. We were to have this deep dive as to the model, and we are still looking at that model. So I'll just say that I think we're reviewing this model that's been put in place. The community service coordinators play a really important role. I agree with you. I think they're very attached. Anyway, that's all I just want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for having that clarification, Paula. That was, I had that same question. Sheila?
So if I could clarify.
You ask it again more clearly.
If you're right, it's a complicated area for us to provide service to tenants, community safety and support. That community safety and support pillar in the region, right, has three principal responsibilities: engagement with tenants at a community level, program delivery, community safety and support. So the CSCs that support the VRP program report into that pillar. They're there to work in the VRP sites with tenants to provide program opportunities, linkages that I've described. They also work with the special constables in CSU. So at an integrated table by community, you have the CSCs for engagement that work with the frontline teams that are on the ground supporting those communities. A member of that integrated team table is a CSU special constable. If you look at the chart for special constables, their structure is aligned with the region, and their special constables are aligned with the tenant service hubs. There is also a community safety supervisor, a new position within the community safety and support pillar that provides a direct link between the work of that pillar and CSU. So it is complex. It's addressing complex issues in our community, and we are working on building that strategy, improving that strategy. This report here today is reporting out on the work that's underway in the VRP sites, on the program delivery side, community support side, and on the CSU Special Constable program. I don't know if that helps.
Other comments or questions? Sheila, what does participated in consultation sessions as part of the CABR strategy mean?
So it means that leadership on the CRP team has conducted focus group with CSU special constables. So they have completed focus groups with tenants. They are also sitting down with CSU special constables to understand their experiences, their realities in executing their day-to-day work in community. So the team has engaged in focus sessions with the special constables directly.
Okay, yeah, I didn't understand why it was there, along with the diversity and mental health training, enhanced capacity, which is another question I have, but you talked about enhanced capacity being part of them doing community patrol with Toronto Police. Is that correct?
They do focus patrols with TPS in the 10 RP sites.
So what does that mean? What does enhanced capacity mean?
It means that they are on site, walking sites with TPS in community.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Amanda, is that your hand?
Debbie, that the community safety is everybody's business. I thought that when we moved to a tenant management model, that everything would start with that, and that our general COO and general managers, through our new organizational framework, would understand clearly and quickly where any problem tenancies are, what they are, what issues there might be, and just so that any issues that require CSU or police could be identified, and it wouldn't simply be a blanket. So I'm so that's the model I thought we were going to be working with. So when you look at a community and everybody, a tenant management model, understand who are the tenants that are having problems. Are they having problems with the rent? Are they having problems with their family? Are they having problems with mental health? Are they having these types of problems? And then who gets called in to deal with that? It just seems to me we have a little bit of a blanket here where the violence reduction is now seeping into a number of other areas. And I want to go back to the holy grail, which is the management model, and when and how our assistant general managers, all of the OU managers now are in the mix, because it's about somebody's tenancy.
Yeah.
If there are people who are committing crimes or dangerous or need to be watched, then that's fine. That is CSU, police, and others. But it has to do with separating out that everybody's bad to who are the people that are causing problems, why are they causing them, how to solve it. And I think we've lost our way a tiny bit. I might be wrong, but when I first heard our violence reduction strategy is the boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, that to me isn't. And then we have a different model, which is tenancy management. Those two things aren't completely aligned at the moment, in my view. So there's still more work to do.
Agreed, Paula. And so I'm very glad that we've made this a priority as a board moving forward. I'm not hearing Uba. You're the only person I'm not seeing on my screen, other than Paula. Do you have a comment or questions? You're muted.
No, I said I just agree with Paula was saying. I don't have any comments or questions. Okay.
So knowing that we will be continuing this conversation here at TSC, but also at the board around our violence reduction plan, our future role and organization of CSU and our other parts of keeping our community safe. Do I have someone to move the motion to accept as information the Violence Reduction Plan Service Delivery Alignment Report? Uba. Thank you. Seconder. Thank you, John. Okay, Uba and John. All in favor? Yay. It's carried. Okay, it's received, I should say. Item number 5. Thank you, Sheila. That was quite a long haul. And thank you to the staff team for the preparation of the materials. We appreciate it. We know it's quite a lot of work.
Thank you.
Contract management update. Sheila, that's you again.
It is.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
Thank you. So this is relatively short. We're providing an update on the contract managed portfolio. So back in July, we undertook actions to enhance oversight and service delivery within the contract managed portfolio. We have aligned the units, buildings that were provided service under contract management with the regions. So G3 regions have responsibility for the full tenancy within their geographic region. They are responsible for the contract managed units, for managing that contract and ensuring tenants receive the quality of service that's required, and they are responsible for the direct managed portfolio, the family units as well within their region. We also undertook in 2020 to bring the contract managed units that were in the West region back into the direct managed portfolio. So we did that in 4 stages. Started in September, October, November, December. We completed the transition of 24 developments, 3,800 units in the West region, from being contract managed to coming under our direct service delivery model. And with that, I am happy to report that in the West, we are now serving all tenants in the region with the same direct managed delivery model. In Central and East, we have aligned the contract managed buildings geographically within their region. The GMs have responsibility for both types of service delivery within their region. And that is the end of my report on the contract managed portfolio.
Thank you, Sheila. Comments, questions?
I just have a comment. Sheila, I think you're doing a great work. I heard a lot of tenants, and as a tenant, I kind of noticed ever since we took the portfolio back and we direct managing, things are working better in terms of maintenance and area much cleaner. So thank you, and thanks to the staff.
Thank you.
Good feedback. Anyone else? No? Amanda? No? Paula? Oh, good. A short one. Okay, I need a motion to receive the report. Uba, seconder. I'm sorry, I have to go in. Thank you, John. All those in favor? The report is received. Okay, I think we have deputations on our harm reduction policy. Dara, I'll move it to you to manage that.
We have 2 deputants in relation to this matter. The first of the 2 deputants is Rhiannon Thomas, who I believe is on the line. Ms. Thomas?
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Rhiannon Thomas. I work at Counterfeit Harm Reduction Program at South Riverdale Community Health Center. This harm reduction program has been around for over 20 years, and we serve the east end of Toronto, including East York and some parts of West Scarborough. I want to speak today because I want to talk about how important it is that the TCHC adopts a harm reduction policy. What I've witnessed and heard from my friends, from my colleagues and our service users over the years related to substance use is around the trauma of poverty and the cycles that can happen around that. I've seen the despair of people who live in some buildings and their fear around violence, and that is a result of that poverty. I've seen some people that use drugs to help deal with this, and many who do it very responsibly. I've seen people watch tons of overdoses happen and bodies coming out of buildings, and I'm sure that the staff at TCHC buildings also experience the fear and despair of that. I've also seen people who feel scared all the time that they're going to be addicted, and once they lose their TCHC housings, there's almost no options left, and generally none. People feel targeted sometimes by Toronto Community Housing staff if they try to help other people in the building by providing and disposing of safe use equipment, but then are also sometimes asked by the same staff to clean up used equipment. I've also seen communities in TCHC buildings take care of each other, picking up food for each other, cooking for each other, providing supplies for each other, and cleaning up inside and outside of their buildings and running to other units to reverse overdoses. We know that there are tons of overdoses happening in TCHC buildings. We know at Counterfeit that there would be many more people who have died if we had not been providing naloxone to those people. We really want to work closely with Toronto Community Housing to train staff to respond to overdose, to train staff to understand drug use, and have community conversations about safety around safe disposal of used equipment, and conversations even about buying and selling drugs, because these things aren't going to stop, and we can't evict or arrest our way out of that. We need to build on the strength of individuals and communities. Toronto Community Housing can assume that there are tenants that use substances. We want to support satellite sites that provide harm reduction instead of punishing or evicting people who are really making a difference in their communities and in their buildings. It would be so helpful if Toronto Community Housing buildings had in-house harm reduction space, small offices with supplies and staff that can help with resources and supports. It would be so helpful if there were naloxone kits available on every floor, and particularly in buildings that struggle with substance use and the issues that can surround that. We want to partner with Toronto Community Housing. We want Toronto Community Housing to partner with harm reduction agencies for support and resources, for education, supplies, place referral for supports. We have that expertise, and we are, sadly, I don't even want to say this, but we're dying. People are dying to help to do this. We want to do this work. We can help. We can make this happen. We need to openly promote and support harm reduction so that tenants who use drugs are not scared to reach out for help and support when they're experiencing difficulties in their unit, like when people take over. People are afraid to reach out because afraid they're going to be evicted and otherwise get in trouble with their housing. So in closing, again, I want to thank you for allowing me time to speak today, and I want to ask you to really support to install harm reduction policy at the Toronto Community Housing, and call us, work with us. We want to help to make changes in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate community partners like you. Dara, next deputant.
Our next deputant is Katie Mayerson.
Hi there, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. That's all right. Thank you. I just want to say that I echo and fully support everything that my colleague Rhiannon just said. So, good morning. My name is Katie Mayerson, and I am on the harm reduction team at Unison Health and Community Services. I also coordinate the North End Harm Reduction Network and sat at the table with TCHC staff that supported the development of the harm reduction policy that you're voting on today. So unsurprisingly, I'm in support of the policy, and I'd like to tell you why. The most important reason is that harm reduction is healthcare. It's healthcare that is non-judgmental, accessible, and meets folks where they're at. It's evidence-informed and is a best practice. It helps prevent fatal overdoses, the transmission of viruses, and acts as a pathway to other resources that folks may need. Simply put, harm reduction saves lives. We've been in an opioid poisoning crisis for years now, and thousands of Ontarians have died preventable premature deaths, including many of your tenants who are important members of their community. By adopting this policy, you will be making the public statement that you care about the well-being of your tenants who use drugs. So at Unison, we've been offering harm reduction services for well over a decade, with our longest running office right in the middle of Lawrence Heights. In 2018, we expanded our program west and brought on additional staff. We knew through our local relationships there were some TCHC buildings that very much needed harm reduction support. When we brought our list to the local TCHC safety advisor, he agreed. We discussed how we could offer support, and he wrote a letter to a TCHC manager of this department, actually, supporting a partnership with us. Thus began a nearly 2-year saga of TCHC head office and management ignoring our emails, making false promises, creating an ever-growing list of hoops to jump through, and being wholly unsupportive of harm reduction in both principle and practice. Although I'd be remiss not to share that the frontline CSCs were all amazing, likely because they were familiar with the day-to-day reality of what was happening on the ground. We ultimately had to bring our concerns to the Board of Health and have a city councilor step in to finally be granted a use of space agreement nearly 24 months later for 2 of the 3 buildings we had requested permits for. It was never explained why it wasn't all 3, and there were onerous restrictions and reporting requirements for the 2 that we were able to access. Once we did get into the community rooms of the 2 buildings, everything went smoothly, and it was wholly anticlimactic. Tenants who use drugs would pop in to connect and access services at the set time every week, and lovely relationships developed. We were able to spread the word about what harm reduction services are available locally, teach people how to use naloxone and reverse overdoses, and connect them to the referrals that they needed. Those of us in the harm reduction community have all seen our friends, colleagues, and service users who are TCHC tenants die of overdoses in their homes. We were all upset that the collective interorganizational team who run the harm reduction drop-in program at 250 Davenport had their work disrupted and almost destroyed by a couple of loud tenants who hate drug users, and the TCHC staff who prioritized their dissent over a program that helps keep tenants alive. People don't generally tell their landlord their drug use status. By partnering with harm reduction programs, as this policy supports, tenants don't have to feel they are risking their tenancy to access harm reduction supports in their building. While this policy is not perfect, for example, there's still much to do to prevent the evictions of tenants who use drugs, adopting this policy is an important first step in repairing some of the deep mistrust and harm that has been caused by TCHC's lack of action in taking a harm reduction approach sooner. As always, we look forward to working with you and your tenants with lived experience to further this important and life-saving work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. As you know, I had a conflict today with my schedule, but I came today particularly for this item. I want to actually thank the 2 deputants for their very articulate deputations, and I just would like to actually urge the members of the Tenant Services Committee to move this policy. I think it's a conservative policy, and although we can look back in terms of actually barriers that might have gotten in the way to us getting here, I think it's actually very timely and very important that we, with some urgency, get this to the board and support our organizations. I think our frontline staff actually are struggling a lot with with this issue and are supportive. And this is just actually really for me a starting point, as someone just said, in terms of moving it forward. I think in the future we might also ask management to provide us a little bit more data around the overdoses in buildings, and to familiarize ourselves more, and rapidly start actioning some of the items in the policy. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Linda. And I'll ask other committee members to hold their comments until we've heard. Sheila, who is presenting? Is it you or is it John? Not you, John. Not committee member John. Not board member John.
Debbie, it's Scott Kirkham.
Oh, Scott. Okay.
If you'd like, I can give a brief presentation and then answer questions.
That would be great, Scott. Thank you.
So this policy, I'm not going to get into all the details because I'm conscious of time, and we've already heard from a couple people on this, but this policy in summary is, and I would agree with the deputant, a first step. Perhaps you'll consider future steps. First step forward to bring TCHC to a point where we have kind of collected and clarified all our existing obligations around harm reduction and tenants who use drugs. So a large chunk of this policy is about equity. It's about recognizing that things like harassment are not okay. And then we take a series of other steps where we clarify that kind of emotionally loaded things that we deal with, like needles, are part of our core business and how we're going to deal with them. So there's a section here about garbage, the fact that needles are garbage, and we simply have an obligation as a landlord to deal with them as such. Many of the sections here are about healthcare services. We clarify here that we have an obligation to make space in our community for healthcare services. Where we get into some specifics are drop-in programs that the deputants mentioned. We have laid out a path in this policy for creating a more turnkey solution to drop-in programs. It settles some of the debates that have raged in the past, where staff discretion or community debate have slowed down the delivery of drop-in programs. We've tried to strike a balance, including both community education, clarity, written agreements that allow us to understand what is going to happen in a drop-in program. And this policy also sets out the core boundaries for drop-in programs. The focus is on tenants and service to tenants. This isn't an open house for the community. And this is about education and not about use. I don't have any reason to believe that our partners plan to open secret safe injection sites, but there are people out there who do worry about that. And so this policy is clear about those matters. And finally, there's naloxone. And this policy makes it clear that we want our staff to have the option to be trained on naloxone. We want our staff who take mandatory first aid training to get trained on naloxone and overdose prevention. And we want to work with partners to make naloxone more available in our communities. So those are the highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I can go to anything in more detail.
Thank you, Scott. John, I'm keeping a speakers list. John, you're on.
Hi, Scott. Do we know how many TCHC residents have died from overdoses in the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years? Do we have any kind of understanding and estimate of how many people have died?
Unfortunately, we don't. We are working on a project right now with Toronto Public Health to better map overdoses to Toronto community housing buildings. Our main challenge, and this is kind of underpinning in the policy itself, is that we're not a healthcare provider.
Right.
So our access to healthcare information, including cause of death, is limited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, listen, I don't need to tell anybody here that this is an epidemic, and were it not for COVID-19, I think governments would be taking a lot more concerted effort to stem this wave of overdoses that's resulting in a lot of deaths of young people, unintended consequences, if you will, of drug use. What does in the report, it says that we will support and facilitate the delivery of harm reduction services to tenants. What exactly does that mean? How will we be able to do that?
So that line is specifically aimed at clarifying that harm reduction is welcome in our buildings. And I suppose a friendlier and less bureaucratic way to say it would have been just that.
So does that mean that Toronto Public Health might come up and set up a room, an office, a station in some facilities?
So I think the typical expectation there are twofold. One is individual caseworkers meeting with individual tenants. And we've heard reports that staff didn't have enough clarity around what was acceptable in a building and were turning away healthcare providers who are attempting to access the building to do just that, provide services directly to a client. The second is the drop-in model, which I think Katie alluded to. And we have a few that have proven successful around the portfolio. I don't think there's enough demand for a permanent office, but drop-in programs which allow drug users to come, meet, receive education, network, frankly, with healthcare providers. That's the model that we're most likely to see getting invited into buildings under this policy.
And I think it was Rihanna, the first deputy, mentioned that, or maybe perhaps the second, mentioned that some tenants may feel that if it's exposed that there are drug users, that their tenancy could be at risk and they could be evicted. And yet our policy says specifically that is not the case. What is your understanding of our tenants' understanding of how they'll be treated?
So as part of this process, we did talk to tenants with lived experience, and absolutely they're concerned about persecution. So the fear is that if you're known to be a drug user, we may try to evict you for drug use. And there's a few ways to maybe stretch the illegal acts clause in the RTA to do just that. But more likely, we would pursue other reasons to evict you more aggressively than they would normally. We'd be less likely to enter into an arrears collection agreement with you. We would just pursue eviction. Or we would be more likely to come down on you for noise or something like that.
And just my last question, Debbie, does harm reduction work in cohort or in partner, like along with trying to get people to get off drugs?
It does.
Harm reduction is, about providing a safe space, but then also there are programs to get people to kick, their addiction to drugs. And do they work in concert with each other?
They do. One of the reasons harm reduction is such a good fit for TCHC is it's essentially saying our business is the impact of drugs. So harm reduction is all about the consequence of drugs. It's not so much about use or not. And that's sort of where we live. We're about outcomes. We're not about the fact that you use drugs. We're about the fact that you use drugs and then you run down the hall screaming or something. We, however, and harm reduction providers want to have less drug use. And harm reduction providers definitely create those connections, just as we do when we match people with supports. But ultimately, we're not healthcare providers, and so we fit better in the harm reduction camp.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the answers. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks for those questions, John. And thank you, Scott, for your presentation. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just have a question, Debbie. It's Paula calling.
Go ahead.
There have been some pilot programs, I believe, and how were those accepted by the other tenants in the buildings in which those took place?
So are you referring to the drop-in programs?
Whatever programs that have been running that are, I know there's one on Davenport, I believe.
Yeah.
So how have I understand the importance of this for the tenants who are needing harm reduction. For the rest of the tenants in the building, how has this been accepted? What issues have they raised? That's one question. Will the CSU be able to provide naloxone? Are they trained for that? Is that one of their job duties? That's another question, if they're well trained for that. And let's just go with those two. Thank you.
Okay, so I can answer both those questions. The first, with regards to the programs and how they've been accepted by the community, it would be fair to say that the programs in Lawrence Heights were accepted by the community with essentially no noise, where the program at Davenport did produce some conflict. There were several tenants, more than one, but less than 10, who put significant effort into blocking the establishment of the Lawrence Heights, or not the Lawrence Heights, the Davenport program, and removing it. They lobbied us to have it removed once it was up and running. One of the reasons that the policy includes the requirement that there be a community engagement meeting ahead of any drop-in, as well as the specific references to the fact that these programs are only for tenants and that use is prohibited during these programs, which would seem to be no-brainers, but we're putting them in anyway for like belt and suspenders, is to prevent a similar conflict from emerging as we found at Davenport. We found ultimately that there was a lack of education that drove a lot of the conflict. Many of the concerns that tenants raised were concerns that were just inaccurate. And so our goal with this policy is to sort of deal with that up front in any future cases and really learn from our mistakes there. In terms of the dispensation of naloxone by CSU officers are required to receive first aid training, have received that training, and I believe, if not everybody who's received first aid training, in the high 90% range. Everyone at TCHC who's supposed to require first aid training has also received training on response to overdoses and the use of naloxone. However, under the sort of response policies around first aid training, while you're required, if you know how to do first aid, to perform first aid on someone who requires it in an emergency, the dispensing of medication is not required. So, for example, you're required to try to resuscitate someone if you're a trained first aider in a situation where they're not breathing using CPR. But if someone's having an anaphylactic reaction, you're not required to give them their EpiPen. You're supposed to help them give it to themselves. So that's still the requirement for naloxone. No staff are required to dispense naloxone as part of their job duties. However, this policy does say that if staff do find themselves in a situation and do choose to use naloxone to reverse an overdose, TCHC supports them and stands behind them.
I'm just going to follow up with you on that, Scott, because
Sure.
One thing to be having an anaphylactic shock and helping somebody get their EpiPen out. It's another thing to be in a situation where you're completely comatose from a drug overdose. There's no way you're able to help it. And so there's no way you can do that yourself. You're requiring someone else. So yeah. I am just wondering what the instructions are to CSU, because we have.
So as it stands right now in the policy that we have laid out here, and that particular nuance in the policy is informed by issues that are beyond our scope. So the rules around who can be told that they have to dispense medication is not just a TCHC issue. So I think we're constrained on that point, but we could definitely provide more detailed legal analysis on that if that's something that you're interested in. But it's my understanding that we've pushed this as far as we can go legally. We are doing everything we can to put CSU officers in a position where they can use naloxone with confidence without requiring it of them. I can tell you that
Okay, that's
CSU
good.
carries and uses naloxone and has used it, that we have a record of 14 times since June.
Oh, good. Thank you very much for that. It's appreciated. Also, just on the, I guess what you said about the education, because I have heard from tenants at Davenport, they said, oh my God, places, whatever, how it was successful in Lawrence Heights compared to Davenport. But there is this issue that obviously, if, anyway, drugs sometimes are a pretty major issue in some of our communities. And so it's interesting how we will square the circle, because harm reduction is one thing, but engaged in sales and distribution is another. Am I right about that? We're not stopping. We're not saying, is there?
So distribution, under this policy, distribution of drugs is still absolutely cause for eviction. And we would report it to the police as well.
Okay. All right. So I think tenants need to know that, because they need to feel like, anyway, you know where I'm going. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just briefly, I think what's clear is that this topic is broader than the policy, and you know, I think it's great that we're actually having the conversation, and I really appreciate everybody's perspective. I think the policy is actually at least acknowledging that people do experience overdoses in our buildings, and that we do actually have to support some form of harm reduction and continue to engage in the conversation. I hope that this is actually the beginning of many more conversations, so that we can actually, you know, really embrace the multiple issues that actually are coming up this morning.
Thanks, Linda, and I agree. I'm sure there will be many more conversations to be had on both sides of the issue, right, from tenants as well. But I second informing tenants around the limitations of the policy. Actually, clarification around the policy and drug use. But thank you, Scott, for the work on this, and to our deputants and Linda for championing it. I believe that there is, if not yet consensus at the board level, certainly all thinking in the same direction in terms of minimizing harm, as it has to do with our tenants and ensuring that the folks who live and pay rent in our buildings have access to the kind of healthcare support that they require. And I agree, harm reduction is about healthcare. So that's my 2 cents. Can I have a mover of the policy, please? Can I please have a motion to approve the harm reduction policy as set out in attachment 1 to the report? Linda, seconder?
Fine.
Uba, all in favor? Keep your hands up. Great. Paula, I'm assuming you're saying yes. Amanda, I'm assuming you're saying yes as well. Thank you. It is passed. Good work, Scott. Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm sure we will continue this conversation. Okay, folks, it is 11:46. We're 16 minutes over our end time. We have half of an agenda still to go. How do we want to manage this? Can I first get permission for people so as to continue the meeting? Unfortunately, I have a hard stop at noon.
I start work at 12.
I see. So if actually, Amanda, if you drop off, if everyone else can stay until noon, we will still have quorum. Thank you, Amanda, for sticking through it. We appreciate that you had to get to work. And if everyone else can stay until noon, Dara, some support, please. Which one item can we address? Can we get tenants' first update done in 15 minutes?
We can.
I think we can, because what I can do, Debbie, is I'm going to, given that Paula Knight is not available today, I'm going to, take questions. And I think quite simply what I can do, because I know that the board would have read the material in advance, we can just open it up to questions from the board on the Tenants First updates.
All right, Kevin, just before we get there, we do have a deputant in relation to that matter. Ms. Korniakova?
I apologize.
Okay, so tenant first, then we'll see where we are and make a decision about probably a second meeting or tabling everything until the next TSC. So our deputant, thank you, Dara.
Ms. Korniakova, are you on the line? Sonia, is Ms. Korniakova able to join us?
Perhaps.
Yes, yes.
I just wonder if I can expedite this by, there's a letter I put in.
Councillor Fletcher, let's do this item and then we'll come back to the agenda discussion. Thank you. Ms. Korniakova, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's my second deputation, and now I would like to relate it to the chapter of the Tenants First report that is dedicated to the development and implementation of the integrated service model. In addition to the points stated in this report, and for the purpose of reviewing the 2021 mandate direction document, EX 17.2, I would like to recommend to committee's consideration 5 points on behalf of the senior artists of Lawrence Heights. To provide the context for my deputation, I submitted to the committee testimonies by senior artists. Based on these and other testimonies and feedback about importance and needs for programs such as Lawrence Heights Art Center, I recommend for your kind consideration the following. Firstly, identify artistic and cultural programs as vital for communities like Saranac and Lawrence Heights, where seniors are very actively initiating and carrying out artistic activities. Secondly, and this point particularly referring to the mandate direction documents, we suggest to credit arts and cultural programs as part of safety, mental health, and well-being strategies. Third point is dealing with support cross-aged art programs for avoiding senior segregation that limits the motivation for inspiring life activities such as art making and mixed age groups. This also allows for passing elders' knowledge and the life experience to younger tenants and vice versa to boost elders' energy levels and the energy of use with the energy of use. I raised this question of preserving the established mixed age groups and initiatives for continued functioning without interruption during the Tenant First public meeting a few months ago. This was accepted by the Tenant First Committee as a valid point for consideration. So the fourth point is invite to support and prioritize the art programs which are initiated within the community as a vital and substantial pillar in the tenant engagement strategy and critical for building a healthy community. As part of acknowledgement of the importance of art programs as a key area for the seniors housing unit for providing healthy life, we suggest that TCHC consider developing a temporary concept of a dedicated space. This space requires a capacity to accommodate the outdoor and indoor art galleries for seniors who have a limited lifespan and need these facilities immediately, rather than in 10 years when revitalization projects will be realized. In the end, I would like to make a link to the last item of today's agenda, as it is very relevant to this deputation. Our group would like to express our appreciation and support of the proposition to investigate the shipping containers option that is recommended by Councillor Fletcher in the item entitled regarding Lawrence Heights revitalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Okay, do we want Kevin to do brief highlights, or do we want to go directly to questions? First question. Dara, we have Councillor Fletcher's recommendations under other business. Do we want to bring this forward and deal with it here now?
We'll follow the committee's direction in relation to that matter. We can bring it forward if the committee wants to deal with it at this time. Okay,
Councillor Fletcher, you had an idea?
Yes, it was just because there seems to be a space issue at Lawrence Heights and perhaps at other revitalization sites where people are still living. It made sense to me to have asked staff to look at containers because they're used successfully in many places. So that would be a recommendation. just to have a look at that, see if that's possible. That would be it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And to clarify, not only for the program that was just presented on, but for all community-based programs, is that correct?
All community-based programs there, and perhaps the location. So our first deputant today talked about using a unit at Malvern, and we know that some of our units are used in this way, but we're under pressure from the AG because we're not really supposed to be turning over units for this use. So I really think the shipping container model or the modular look at something which can serve as a community-based space is something that can be used in many different locations.
Thank you. So let's do, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to say, Debbie, you know, we support the examination of this, and I think it is included in the motion that we'll bring it back to the May meeting, the results of our investigation and what that would look like. And so I'm happy to, I think we can incorporate that as part of this agenda item, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this particular agenda item if there are any.
I would just ask you, Mr. Kevin, please look at some of the other locations because we know how many units are being used for community development, and our first great young deputant. I want to know why that's units being used there. If there's a lot of space in that community, then this might be another option. So we're focusing, started at Lawrence Heights, but really looking at what's possible in those communities where we are using units and taking away the living quarters. Okay?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we will do that, Councillor.
Good. And we know scatting organizations like Scatting Court has used it very successfully. Dara, do we need to, can we move this motion that you just put up on the screen first before Kevin gives his highlights, or do we want to, which order do you want to do this in?
I'm happy to proceed to consider the councillor's motion, or the motion arising out of the councillor's communication first, and then Kevin can take us through the rest of the report.
Very good. Paula, I'm assuming you're moving. Do we have a seconder? I guess. Thank you, Linda. All in favor? Thank you. Amanda, I know you're still driving, so I'm assuming you're saying yes. And Uba, yes, it's carried. Okay, Kevin, highlights and then comments or questions.
Sorry, I'm just going to, just in consciousness of the time, it being 11:55, I'm going to open it up, straight for questions. I will take the report as read, and I'm available to clarify.
Comments or questions? Wow. Okay. Do we have? Do we have a motion to receive the report? John, seconder. Linda, all in favor? That was very easy. Thank you all. The report is received. Okay, it's 4 minutes to noon. We're going to end. What do we want to do with the rest of the agenda items? John?
Is there not only one item left, which is the public TSC work plan? Is that all that's left?
That is all that's left.
Oh, thanks for that. I thought that we had something else. Good. So we can get that done in 2 minutes.
And again, I can offer that this is the staff assessment based on requests from the committee to address outstanding items that we're aware of as to the work that the committee would plan for itself as part of its 2021 calendar. It doesn't restrict the ability of the committee to consider other matters. We've brought it to the committee at this point in time to give the committee the opportunity to identify matters that we haven't identified that the committee will want to deal with in the course of this year. But subject to those matters and the ability of the committee to identify matters at a later date, this is our assessment of the committee's work for the year.
The only thing on here that I recognize is a comment made by Councillor Fletcher earlier, to which I am in agreement, is I don't think we need an OACH update every quarter. And that's still on here.
It is.
I'd be happy twice a year, I think, semi-annually.
We anticipate that we'll be bringing forward a report to the February board meeting that will address in a manner that is consistent with the recommendation that the commissioner has made herself as to the level of reporting that she brings to the board, a revised approach to scheduling her reports, and that will then be implemented into the work plan.
Got it.
And so, John, just to add on to that, right now that it is a requirement of the board that we report out quarterly. So in order to change that time, we need the board to approve that, and that's what we're trying to bring forward, reflecting the views of this committee.
I would also like to look at the nature of the reports. There are her recommendations, and then what we have been unable to secure up until recently is actually the implementation of those recommendations. We've not tracked those or had that be, it's just information. And the whole idea of the report is to ensure that there's changes being made in addressing the collection of rent and seniors and vulnerable tenants. So I find that's why it's frustrating to have report after report, because she's not saying, well, this has been done and this hasn't been done, etc. So I think the nature of that reporting also needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Okay, so with all that background, knowing we will have an opportunity for further discussion at the board meeting, and as well as the changes in terms of frequency of reporting and also how the report is presented, can I have someone move to approve the TSC work plan for 2021? Linda, thank you. John seconded. All in favor? It's a go. Thank you all. It's approved. Okay, we've dealt with our other business. If there are no other business for our meeting agenda, can I please, motion to adjourn. It's not all jump up and down. Linda and Uba, all in favor? Thank you all very much. It was quite exciting and we got through it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.